Well, hey there, and welcome to Wedding Planning Simplified. I'm Amy from Unmistakably You, and I am here today to chat all about your wedding. If you have been joining us for a while, you know that every week at 1 o'clock on Sunday, we go live to try to help you navigate some of the issues that you might be facing in your wedding planning. We are currently in the middle of a series talking about last minute kind of details that you may be dealing with if you are planning for a wedding in the near future. But of course, all of this is applicable to your wedding whenever it's happening, if it's 2023 or beyond. We archive all of these videos, so please feel free to go and check out our video archive and check for all of the helpful information that we have given you in the past. And as always, if you need additional help, we are here. So feel free to post a comment, ask a question. If I say something that resonates, please feel free to say, oh my gosh, yes. Or you know what? You could even just say, hey, Amy, how's it going? Because I kind of feel like I'm talking into nothingness right now. So if you're here and you want to say, hey, I would love that. If you're catching us on the replay, you can always send an email to amy@unmistakably.you.com if you have follow-up questions, or just post a comment and we will make sure to answer any questions that you have. So today we are here to talk about communicating last minute changes in your wedding logistics with your vendors and with your guests. Now, we know that you are all incredibly organized and that you've been taking advantage of our videos and that you listen to all of our advice because, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? And we know that you are organized and you haven't procrastinated on anything, and all of your details are written in, permanent marker, and nothing could ever possibly go wrong or change on your day, right? Well, I wish I could say that was the case. Despite your best intentions and your best laid plans, there are things that unfortunately could happen. And those are issues that we always advise you to try and have a backup plan for and prepare for in advance so that you can feel secure knowing that if the power goes out, or if there's unexpected construction or road closures, or if you're planning an outdoor ceremony and Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, you'll know that you have a backup plan. So if you have a solid plan, we really believe it helps you to stay a lot calmer and to, I don't know whether I just make this stuff up, I probably do, but I feel like if you have a solid plan, you're not going to have to use it. Whereas if you don't have a solid plan, that's when the stress comes in and that's when the proverbial shit could hit the fan. So we're going to talk about those last minute things that you can't control. So things like I said, acts of nature or power failures or heaven forbid, vendor cancellations or something like that, that you might need to deal with in the day of the wedding or perhaps the couple of days before the wedding. So when it comes to communicating those last minute details, you are going to have to make sure that somehow everybody's on the same page if the plans have changed. You've laid your best plans, you've communicated those clearly and efficiently with your guests and with your vendors. But if things change, you need to know how you're going to make sure that that information doesn't get lost in the shuffle. So I'd like to kind of tackle dealing with your vendors first. So when it comes to communicating with your vendors, I always advise you right from the get-go, if they don't communicate this in their onboarding or in your initial meetings, ask how they prefer that you get in touch with them. Personally, and I certainly can't speak to all vendors, but personally, I really prefer that most communication that's not done face-to-face in a meeting happens via email. And the reason for that is because I am in charge of so very, very many details for so very many couples that if there's something sitting in my inbox, I know I'm going to deal with it before I archive that message. And then even when that message is archived, I can still search it and retrieve it and find that information if I need it. Whereas in a text message, it's a lot harder to do that. So there's no guarantee that I'm not going to quickly read it and then the unread notification goes away and then I forget about it because I'm in the thick of something else. So personally, I prefer that most pre-wedding communication be done by email, but certainly ask your vendors what they prefer. But then I make the caveat with my couples that if there's something happening in the couple of days before the wedding, Feel free to text me. Absolutely. If it's a little question or something like a location change or a rain plan communication, please, especially if it's on the day of, text me, because oftentimes I'm driving. If, like yesterday, my wedding was quite a distance away from my studio. And so I was in the car for an hour, not checking my email for an hour before I got to the venue. So I can get texts, I can respond with Siri. I have a daughter who's supposed to be taking a nap and she's not. And so give me 1 second. Pardon me, real life calls. Sorry. She doesn't want to have a nap. She's a dance recital later and she's really not into this whole rest thing. Who needs sleep, right? Me, I do. In any case, sorry for that distraction. So like I was saying, I'm going to get an email, or I'm not going to get an email in the car, but I would be much more likely to get a text and use Siri to respond. And that way I have the information immediately. I am not, as a general rule, ever a big fan of communication via social media, mostly because I'm an old lady and Instagram and myself don't have a great relationship. Facebook messages, sure, but I don't check those as frequently as I check my email. So with your individual vendors, make sure that you have that communication so that you know exactly how they prefer to be contacted if there is one of those last minute changes. And specifically, if you are going to be texting them, set them up as a contact in your phone in the days prior to the wedding, because if you suddenly need to notify your photographer that the first look location has changed because there's a flood by the river where you planned to do it, you're not going to want to go back in your contract or back in your emails and look at that signature line and find the phone number and plug it in. If you already have your photographer set up as a contact, it's going to be so much quicker to be able to just contact them on the spur of the moment, or to say to your bridesmaid, hey, can you grab my phone and text the photographer? She's under whatever the name is in my contacts. Much, much faster and far less stressful for you as you're trying to presumably deal with a bunch of other issues like finishing hair and makeup and that kind of thing. Or, if your power at your venue goes out and you can't, have hair and makeup done there anymore. I've had this happen in the past as well. You're going to want to be able to contact those vendors quickly. So put their contact information in your phone. So pardon me, with regard to communicating with vendors, make sure that they have the best laid plans, but also if you know the backup plan beforehand, let them know so that they're not surprised or scrambling when you notify them last minute. If you're planning a beautiful outdoor ceremony and all of a sudden you have to go to the backup plan, which is the church down the road, make sure that the vendors have the address of the church down the road. Don't try to text them all of that information the morning of. Just let them know, I'll confirm if the weather looks dicey, I'll let you know for sure. But that way they at least know where they're going and they know what the plan is beforehand. So you're not catching them off guard with a text in the last seconds before before it's go time. Same thing goes for your guests. And most frequently, realistically, here in Ontario, we're dealing with questions of last minute weather changes. In the old days, it used to be very common to send a rain card with your invitation. So you would send your RSVP and you would send a rain card that says, the ceremony is meant to be outdoors at my parents' farm, but if it's raining, then we're going to move to the Presbyterian church down the road, or whatever it is. The question with that always is, what constitutes too rainy? So you need to think about who's making that rain call, when that rain call is getting made, and how you're going to communicate that with the guests. I have lots of couples who say, if it's just spitting lightly, we're still going to go with plan A. Whereas your Aunt Martha might think, oh, it's spitting lightly, we're going with plan B. So communication with guests and as much clarity as possible is always really important. So if you have a website, put plan A on the website, put plan B on the website, and then say, if we have to put plan B into place, here's when we will do it and how we will communicate that to you. So if you're going to make the call an hour before that you're moving to the church down the road, or that there's a different location for rain, then let them know to check their email the hour before, or to check the website the hour before, or to check the Facebook group the hour before. So this day and age with technology, those old-fashioned rain cards aren't often sent out because we tend to have everybody's contact information a lot more easily accessible. So you could choose, for instance, especially if you've sent out your invitations via email, you'll already have the email list for all of your guests. All you need to do is draft up an email, keep it in your drafts folder that says, hey, unfortunately, Mother Nature isn't cooperating with us today. We are going to implement the rain plan. Draft that up, put in the address where they're going, and assign one of your wedding party or your family members to hit send on that email if you need to. So you've already done the work. Nobody's drafting an email. Nobody's searching for the address of the rain location. It's just ready to go. Somebody hits send. Or you have a draft prepared on your website of an update. If you have pop-up capabilities on your website, even better. You can put that in as a pop-up so that people who are checking your website are going to be notified immediately. You could, if you want to be old-fashioned about it, do an old-fashioned phone tree. I don't know about you, but when I was in high school in band, there was a phone tree that if the conductor was sick and he had to cancel the 7 a.m. rehearsal, he called one person and they called two people and they called four people. And then all of a sudden, everybody knew within a very short amount of time. You can certainly set something up like that if you want to, but obviously that needs to be done well in advance and it needs to be communicated to your guests as well. But generally speaking, I would advise that you are as forthright with your guests as possible so that if you have a website, put the rain plan on there right from the get-go so that they know this is a potential that might happen. Some things, though, you can't foresee and plan for quite that far in advance. Summer happens to be construction season in good old London, Ontario. I'm sure it's like that most other places as well. So if all of a sudden there's a road closure that you don't anticipate, having an instant or quicker way to communicate with your guests is going to be really important. And a lot of times that's where you might depend on your family to start spreading things by word of mouth. You may need to even station some sort of bouncers or parking attendants at the site to redirect guests if need be. So if there happens to be an unexpected road closure, maybe you can have a cousin sit by the side of the road where that closure is, directing guests to go around the block or whatever it is. Maybe if the plan was like yesterday, my wedding was on private property and they had parking attendants at the main entrance to the parking space to direct guests that if there was no parking left, they were to go down the road and showing them where to go. So that plan also applies if you have to change the plan because of rain. Now, in that situation, and this goes back to the pre-planning and the being prepared and the anticipating right from the get-go, if you know that there is going to be a secondary ceremony location in the instance of rain, make sure that you communicate with all of your vendors, but especially your officiant, that if you have to implement a rain plan, it may cause a delay of half an hour or so on your ceremony. You just want to make sure that your officiant isn't going to be then racing off to get to another wedding or to another commitment, because oftentimes officiants will do 2 or 3 weddings on a day. And if your wedding all of a sudden is running half an hour late because you had to transport guests to a new venue, that might impact the rest of their day. So make sure that you're trying to think of these things right from the get-go. If you have a good plan in place, the chances of actually having to implement it are probably a little bit more slim. So be prepared. Think through things in advance, well in advance of the day. Lean on your vendors, but make sure that they are well advised of all of the potential contingencies. They will help you to come up with those plans, but you do need to talk about it with them in advance. So hopefully your wedding goes completely as smoothly as you've envisioned. There are no delays, there are no surprises, there's no construction, there's no bad weather. But in the event that there is, you'll have plans in your back pocket to reduce your stress and make sure that you can still go forward with plan B, and it'll be almost as awesome as plan A would have been. As always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to send me a message or respond to this video or send us a private message here. And we will be back with you next week talking through something else that I didn't look up before I got on here, but it'll be hopefully helpful. So we'll see you then. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to go try and convince a 5-year-old to have a nap, and you take care of yourself. Bye-bye.